Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with a bit of Dawn of War 2 Elite Mod gameplay. And this time around it's going to be slightly different from the usual live gameplay footage I tend to post up, because I'm actually going to be attempting to cast a game, and we will see how this goes. This was one of the games Sakarma and I played in a recent 2v2 team tournament for Elite Mod. We had a lot of fun, got way further than we expected, and had some pretty intense and fast-paced matchups, and I decided, you know what, why not share some of it with you guys, and hopefully you guys do enjoy the game, and have some fun watching, as much fun as we had playing. So, going into this match, Sakarma was going in as the Commando Knob, a sneaky git who, of course, can lay down quite a bit of Daka and throw out stun bombs, snare your opponents. Very good for that. Besides him, I did bring the Inquisitor, looking to hunt down some witches, and we do definitely have a witch on the field, the Foul Warlock, leading the Eldar host, alongside a Tyrannid mob led by Feardson's Ravener Alpha. And so, quite a lot of support characters here. No sort of straight up brawler, except kind of the Warlock, but he's an Eldar, so he's squishier than an Inquisitor, so not the tankiest of characters. No war bosses, no hive tyrants, nothing of that nature. And that's going to make for a bit of an interesting game. Now, immediately here, we are going to start engaging on the Eldar. My Inquisitor pushing in against that poor Warlock and trying to get some hits in. While down here, Sakarma does engage on these Tyranids and already has some of them on the run. His Slugga boys as well as his Shootas just mowing down some Hormagaunts here. Up top, in the meantime, we do force away the Warlock with our Inquisitor, while flamethrowers open up on the Banshees, and flamethrowers are incredibly powerful against the early game Eldar. That wonderful Holy Prometheum was capable of melting through that very low HP pool with the splash damage that it deals, especially if your opponent tries to camp and cover. And so we are able to force the Eldar back here, to send them running for the hills. And so Sakarma and I do net ourselves a bit of a battlefield advantage here early on, but at the same time our opponents are not sitting idly by and have already thrown up power nodes as well as power generators back here, and that is going to give them a significant power lead. And in this game, power is what you need to upgrade units, it's what you need to purchase your tech ups, and it's also important for vehicles later on in the game, so that could be a game-changing lead. In the meantime, over here, Sakarma's orcs do retreat to a stout Imperial Guard position here, and manage to push off this Tyrannid menace here. The bottom victory point actually remaining uncapped throughout this entire time, since both teams were very much fixated on these central points. And unfortunately for Sakarma and I, the only power we have is this lone, sort of sad-looking power node over here in the bottom corner. We actually haven't even noted up the top right, so definitely not the greatest job there getting our own power, but we have been investing more, trying to get some squads out early, getting some of those upgrades like flamers out, that sort of thing. In the meantime, over here, once again, another fight going down. The Inquisitor is going to push in against these Banshees. Sentinel moves forward and stomps them, making them retreat. Fortunately, they retreated before the stomp went off, and now there are Hormagaunts hot on its tail. But we do have those wonderful flamethrowers, and once again, Tyranids with their very low HP per model do not hold up well at all. In the meantime, though, Feardson has gotten now his 4th squad, a Warrior Brood, and Warrior Brood are quite the menace. They're a very powerful melee squad that grants nearby units a synapse, making them fight a bit more effectively. That also means that if they get sniped, when they actually cause a synapse backlash that damages nearby units and knocks them over. But they can be upgraded with a Barbed Strangler, which can suppress Imperial Guard troops, or actually any troops, but is very potent against Imperial Guard especially, because they tend to rely so much on their shooting blobs. Regardless, over here, once again, the Nids are pushed back, but this time around our opponents have sort of gained the edge here, really taking control of the center. Finally, I am noting up the top a bit late to the party. While in the meantime, Sakarma has dropped a full gen farm down in the bottom corner, but in the meantime, our opponents have genned up fully on both of their power sources, so we're still kind of lagging behind on the power. I have gotten my own 4th squad out, artillery spotters. These guys can call in mortar strikes, they can later call in spotter shells, or incendiary strikes, or smoke shells. They've just got a whole plethora of different artillery abilities, each nastier than the next, and can be used both offensively and defensively, depending on the situation. But down here, Sakarma is engaging on the Eldar, getting pressured by these very angry Banshees, and these ladies are just tearing up the poor Slugga boys, almost wiping them out here. Fortunately, though, the mass of Daka here does help. Over here, though, I do make a bit of a misplay. I see that the Tyranids are pushing in for a power bash, Feardson committing his entire army here, but I push up with my army, and these Tyranid warriors that were marching up to reinforce actually catch me in the flank when I'm not prepared, and so they're going to just mince through my poor guardsmen. In come the Hormigaunt swarms. We do get a beautiful stomp, but it's just not enough because there's 3 melee squads. Even with a mortar shell dropping down to disrupt that melee further, we are forced to run for the hills, and definitely a big problem because now we're going to lose this massive gen farm I dropped up here. There's no way I can recover that my troops in time to reinforce that. And although the Sentinel is going to drop a few pot shots at the warrior brood here, it's nowhere near enough to stop the Nid menace. Fortunately, though, Sakarma is capping the bottom and has managed to pressure off the Eldar, Ghost Eldar. Our opponent's actually kind of swapping flanks here, and that kind of caught both of us by surprise because we've been building to fight a specific type of opponent, and now you find yourself fighting a different type of opponent you're maybe not prepared for as well. But I do now get out the wonderful Holy Brazier on the Inquisitor, which can drop a AoE debuff as well as damaging area, the Holy Pyre. And so looking to get that power melee into action here against the warriors who do dive in, but you know, they're taking quite the pounding from the Imperial Guard shooting. And I actually drop a Hammer of Witches there to snare the unit, prevent them from escaping, and we actually snipe a model, so that's nice. It's going to force them to pay a little more to replace them. We also do get our additional gens up to replace our losses and hurt these annoying Ravener Alpha here. In the meantime, though, Eldar are pushing up to reinforce. You can see not all the Tyranid host retreated, only the warriors were forced off. And although Sakarma is pushing to engage on these Eldar, I am about to walk into a bit of a trap. The Sentinel pushing forward, looking to engage on these Dire Avengers. You can see a mortar shell coming in and going to disrupt them, send them flying. But by now the Warlock is well on his way. He's got the Immolator on a sword that, of course, does lots of damage and lights enemies from fire when he's in melee, but you can also drop this area to burn your opponents alive. So nasty stuff. Meantime, my Inquisitor and my Spotter Squad forced to run for dear life, as are these Flamethrower Guardsmen, and that leaves the Banshees practically uncontested here. They do have a bit of a defensive buff dropped on them there by the Warlocks, one of his globals. That is going to make them absolute beefcakes against this poke damage from the Sentinel. And Sakarma, who's coming in a little late to try and reinforce me, almost loses his Slugga Boys there. Fortunately, the suppression from the Shuda Boys, aiming what's that, saving the day. And by the way, when Shuda Boys upgrade with big Shudas, it doesn't just increase their damage. It gives them an ability that suppresses enemies at the cost of damage. It's pretty cool stuff. It keeps them relevant into the late game. In the meantime, though, keep in mind, once again, it's not a simple case of who won the battlefield. Now, yes, we were forced to withdraw. Sakarma had to pull back most of his forces. I had to completely retreat. But we do control 2 of the victory points, and we are sort of pressuring our opponents. They are going to try to get a bit of a sneaky power bash here, or not really sneaky, just kind of push in for a power bash. But in turn, we are pushing out and looking to pressure them back with some lasgun and flamethrower fire. Problem is that, as I mentioned before, that power situation really coming back to bite us in the rear. As you can see here, our opponents have hit tier 2 far before we have. Sakarma and I just didn't have the resources, as you can see, not holding up too well on the resource front here. And our opponents are going to get vehicles, a Wraith Lord, a very powerful melee walker, out way before we even hit tier 2. So we're not going to have AV or anti-vehicle abilities on the field in time. So that's definitely some brutal stuff. Now, fortunately, as Imperial Guard, you can upgrade your Sentinel with a rocket launcher, but still not ideal. Not an ideal, or to get really quick AV on the field, but it's not an ideal situation. Sakarma is going to be the last to hit tier 2, and he is pressured back down south here. The Eldar just plowing through his forces and forcing him to pull back as he does sort of reorganize here. In the bottom, he actually did lose his poor commando. The guy laying there forlorn on the ground, looking very sad. In the meantime, we are going to get engaged upon by a mob of very angry Nids. I do drop the Holy Pyre there, slowing and weakening all this Nid mob. But in the meantime, a bit of a slip-up. I retreat too late with his guard squad, and they are going to get wiped, cut down by those scything talons, as the Eldar Wraith Lord does sort of just pile through, pressuring my troops, and I'm just going to be forced to retreat in full here. Not keeping my artillery spotters in fight, not keeping my guardsmen in there. We got to run like heck. And granted, my Inquisitor is going to keep sticking around here, slapping these Warrior Brood around. They did get their upgrade, Adrenal Glands. I think that's a bit of an odd one against Imperial Guard. It does give them heavy melee, makes them more potent against vehicles especially. But it also does deny them the usage of their Thorax Swarm, which is an anti-vehicle snare, as well as making it so that they cannot get the Barbed Strangler. So first one won't be able to suppress my troops. Now the Wraith Lord here is forced to back the hell away, and we do get our Sentinel equipped with a missile launcher, so we have a little bit of AV, but we have lost our guard squad. I am now getting some Ogren on the field to get some proper fighty troops into melee, while at the same time Sakarma is investing quite heavily into tier 2, getting tank busters as well as a war truck. The war truck allowing him to reinforce as well as ferry his boys around at high speeds, and the tank busters giving him a little bit of anti-vehicle prowess. In the meantime, though, Furtzen already on his way to tier 3 with his very powerful push here, just forcing my troops to back the hell away. And he's got some upgrades on his Raven Alpha, both the Hardened Carapace, which allows him to burrow around like this, being a sneaky lad, as well as Acid Splatter, which gives him some nasty, nasty melee damage. But the Sentinel with its grenade, or not grenade launcher, rocket launcher, does sort of push back some of these Termagants. It can do some damage, and it's a situation kind of reminiscent of the one previously. These Warrior Brood are trying to back off, trying to retreat, and once again the Inquisitor is pursuing them as best she can, dropping a Hammer of the Witches there. I was trying to guess which model was most beat up, looking to snipe it out and cause that psychic backlash, and you can see once again we net that stun. But my opponent here decides to engage on the Inquisitor, looking for an opportunity. We have the Rosarius though, which grants us a conversion field, which trades energy for damage absorbed. We are actually going to eradicate some of these foul Hormagaunts. These wonderful Ogren here helping force off the Ravner Alpha. In the south, in the meantime, Sakarma here trading tit for tat with the Eldar, sending some units fleeing, while at the same time forced to pull back and sort of cycle his troops in and out. Certainly not a one-sided affair either way. The poor truck really mauled right now, probably from the anti-vehicle Bright Lance that's been equipped on the Wraith Lord. He can get a shoulder-mounted weapon. It allows him to do quite a bit of anti-vehicle damage. Otherwise, he can get a shuriken cannon, which makes him better against infantry. But most players I've seen take the Bright Lance just because it gives you better prowess against vehicles, which is kind of more important. Wraith Lord can already smack around infantry pretty well. Now over here, my Sentinel is bashing power, though being a little dumb, to put it mildly. Decides to push really close to that generator because that's what you need to launch a missile, no doubt. The Ogren just kind of chilling out here with these spotters, protecting their little buddies. Well, the rest of my troops have kind of retreated. The Inquisitor had to retreat to heal up. We got a Stormtrooper squad on the field. I decided to call these guys in. The nice thing about Stormtroopers is that as the Inquisitor, they're a dirt cheap call-in. They cost you 200 rec, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. That's cheaper than Guardsmen and a little bit of red. Drop an area on the map, and if you upgrade them, you can get some decent instant anti-vehicle. Now, Furtzen here is compensating for his losses by unleashing a Carnifex upon us, and Carnifexes are nasty. You can get a bigger Barb Strangler on them, a bigger variant than what the Warrior Brood gets, which just deletes infantry units. Even Terminators have to fear a Barb Strangler's impact, though it doesn't suppress them, much less poor Guardsmen or Orc Shooter Boys. That said, Sakarma is currently being engaged upon kind of 2v1, and he's kind of poking back and forth, but he's definitely outnumbered, so I'm going to pull my guard mob down lower, coming in with the Ogren as well as the Guardsmen, the lone squad that has survived, and kind of crumping on these Banshees. They do get that little bit of a survivability boost, but the Ogren just use their ed, thanks to their bone ed, and just crush those Banshees underfoot. In the meantime, the Wraith Lord is just plowing through, doing immense amounts of damage, but taking those constant pot shots from the Sentinel, and the Ogren are now going to pile on, pin him down, and at the same time, those tank busters just going to pound town on this poor Wraith Lord. Now, granted, my opponent doing insane amounts of damage here. First, I'd say my opponent, but both our opponents here. Furtzen just melting my poor Ogren with the power of his Warrior Brood. And we are kind of being forced to flee. Grenade there, gorgeous grenade from the Dire Avengers, annihilating my Stormtroopers because I was just slow on the micro. Artillery spotters do stick around. Sentinel gets a little bit of a stomp, but yeah, we definitely bled a bit there. At the same time, we did some damage. We took out that Wraith Lord, though immediately Ghost replaced it with a Seer Council. Meantime, Hormagaun Brood was wiped out down here by Sakarma. So it's definitely been a bit of a back and forth, a brutal tit-for-tat trade. And I do believe we came out on top here. We didn't lose any units. Took out several of our opponent's units, especially Furtzen, losing another Hormagaun. I guess the Ghost there did lose his Wraith Lord, so some brutal casualties. But now with the Carnifex taking the point, we're not going to be able to do very much to stop that. The Sentinel gets a cheeky missile there, just poking away at the Carnifex, doing about 100 damage. But now he's forced to back off as the Seer Council is hot in his tail. And of course, those crack missiles, those anti-vehicle missiles, don't do very much against Seer Council. They tend to miss. We do stomp these space elves and back the hell away because I don't feel like losing my Sentinel. I like that crowd control. That said, everybody's now tier 3. That means tanks are going to be hitting the field, most likely. Knobs coming out for Sakarma. These guys are the meanest, the greenest, the most brutal Orc infantry you can put on the field. Great as a sort of line-breaking unit. And already they're getting meaner and greener. which is one of their better upgrades. It gives them Frenzy, allows them to ignore suppression, and reduces damage taken by a massive percentage. I believe it's 90%. And they are all now getting their knob, the knob of all knobs, and so that's going to make them even beefier. Anytime you can see my Stormtroopers now equipped with that anti-armor kit that gives them a Melta-Guns as well as a Melta-Bomb. We're going to hit that Vex with it, look to focus them down. But, of course, our opponents are taking this line down. Furtzen as well as Ghost just pushing through, diving in with a mixture of Seer Council as well as Banshees. But those knobs, they're nasty lads. They're actually getting their U-Jammers, a very expensive upgrade that makes them do more damage. So just making them all the more brutal. The poor Stormtroopers here getting mulched a bit. But look at how much damage they've done to the Vex with those Meltas as they were ignored for so long. Although they are going to be forced to retreat here. The damage is done. The Vex is dead. Furtzen is down to just 2 units. Unfortunately, a nuke hits my troops, sending several of them sprawling, kills a guard squad, kills the poor Sentinel, so I'm now quite beaten up. And unfortunately, Sakarma is being forced to back off here as well. Now, granted, the knobs just annihilate those poor Dire Avengers. They explode in a welter of blood. Brutal stuff. Knobs already up to level 2, though they have actually lost their knob leader, unfortunately, so a bit of a costly lost there, but they're going to intercept the Ravener Alpha, and Furtzen is really, really left hurting. Now, granted, I took massive casualties. Ghost took some casualties in there as well, losing Dire Avenger. The big winner in that fight was Sakarma, and fortunately, Sakarma's on my team, so right now, the population is very much in our favor. Sakarma has a bigger army than both of our opponents combined, but keep in mind, Swarmlord is now in the way. Ghost has a Seer Council. And much of Sakarma's force, and as well as my force for that matter, is tier 2 and often tier 1 units, which are just not that good in late game against more elite troops such as a Swarmlord. So that is something to keep in mind, that while the Knob Squad is insanely powerful, the rest of the bunch here is not so much. And Furtzen and Ghost do still have resources to burn through at least a little bit to replace their troops. Now there's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Sakarma does engage on the Eldar mob here. You can see the Warlock there actually has gotten Providence, which grants him temporary invulnerability. It's pretty nuts. I drop in a incendiary strike there with a Valkyrie. Good old help that Sakarma may or may not have appreciated, given that it incinerated some of his knobs. But fortunately, the knobs are reinforcing off the truck, or they were until recently. They actually are going to take a beefy grenade here, but fortunately they have so much HP that they just don't give a crap. So even though they lose 2 miles there, they suffer through it and are going to recover. But that reinforcing is going to cost Sakarma quite a bit. In the meantime, at this stage, I was deciding to save up for a Baneblade. We talked about it a little bit, and although Baneblades are often kind of the death of games, they can oftentimes be a big waste. I figured that it would be a decent choice, and I was going to give it a shot. I was going to have some fun. I'm going to try it out, because who doesn't like 11 barrels of hell? Now up top here, Furtzen actually using the mobility on his Termagants, as well as these Ravener tunnels, which have been laid around by the Ravener Alpha to fast cap our victory point up here. In the meantime, Sakarma and I kind of consolidating here in the bottom. I've taken this opportunity to bash Capillary Towers. For those of you who don't know, Capillary Towers grant boost. They essentially act as a synapse creature, or they grant the synapse aura, the same synapse aura, I believe, as the one granted by Tyranid warriors, which unfortunately have been lost for Furtzen at this point. But that's definitely some potent stuff. Fortunately, I haven't replaced the Ogren Bonehead here, so they're without a leader. Similarly, I believe, oh no, Sakarma has replaced his Knob leader, so that is good at least. We're going to push in here, though immediately getting disrupted by that very angry Warlock. But, you know, some Melta Bombs going in on the Swarmlord, and we're immediately swarming all over the Swarmlord. Swarm the Swarmlord. With all this heavy melee. Now, heavy melee, really good against vehicles. That is actually what the Swarmlord's armor counts as. It's actually vehicle armor, not heavy infantry or super heavy infantry, as some of the other ultimate big beasties. So he's getting mauled to death here, really taking a beating. And we're just trying to swarm him, but at the same time, I'm bleeding hard. I've lost my Stormtroopers. They get run down there by the Seer Council. Similarly, lost my spotters, I believe it was. And the Ogre now, even though I'm trying to retreat, trying to flee, trying to get that Bonehead out, too little too late. They get caught by the mob of Eldar, melee rage, and deleted. And now I'm without an army. Now I'm the weakest player on the field. And yeah, we did take out Furtzen's Swarmlord, which is a very expensive unit, but losing 3 units for it was not worth it. Not gonna lie. So we're now in a bit of a grim predicament. Granted, the victory points are in Sakarma and I's favor. so we do have a little bit of time on our hands. And I am about to get a Baneblade out. But our opponents do have a comparable army size. Well, I say comparable. I guess Sakarma just has such a massive army that it doesn't matter. But our opponents are going to be able to start pumping out some replacement units soon, no doubt. With 500 rec, Furtzen should have no, and 130 power. Furtzen should have no problem getting some new card effects or something out in the field. A Ghost as well has more than enough power and rec. Not sure what he's saving up for, but despite being pushed back, we are going to recover here, bounce back. I immediately get a new guard squad out to repair the Baneblade. That is one of the, I guess, unique traits of most starting squads, except the Tyrannid Hormigons, that they can repair vehicles. And Guardsmen are no exception. And so I don't want to leave the repairs to Sakarma having to try to beg him to have the Orc Slugger Boys fix my tank here. So instead I get my own guard squad to do it. Now an Eldritch Storm does go down, smacking the Baneblade with furious bolts of lightning. Very, very frightening, and doing basically frack all, because the Baneblade just tanks those lightning bolts like nothing. Over in the meantime, Inquisitor trying to save the Shootas as well as the Tank Busters from these very angry Banshees, who are now level 4, which makes them much more potent in melee, makes them launch those special attacks much more often where they send enemies flying. Just nasty stuff. And so very, very brutal. In the meantime, though, these poor Dire Avengers get caught out by Sakarma Sluggas and sent fleeing back once they came. Unfortunately, they were not able to pick off the Warlock, and so he gets away. In the meantime, first I'm getting another Swarmlord while Ghost gets out an Avatar, so that's what he was saving for. The big boy, the big fearsome beastie, and it's going to be a game of super units. The only one who doesn't have a super unit out right now is Sakarma, so and he just doesn't have the population space for it. He's been too good at keeping his troops alive. Now, at this stage, we are trying to cap the points. I actually send my guard squad up to the high ground here, upgrading them with plasma guns just to get a little bit of extra oomph out of them. Plasma guns make them much more potent against some of the heavier infantry, though. Right now, I guess our opponents don't have much heavy infantry. It does let you harm the Avatar, though, who is a super heavy infantry. And I guess it would do a little more damage to the Swarmlord, because it does do a little better against vehicles. Now, this ballsy Seer Council here pushing through the Firestorm, getting suppressed by those heavy bolters on the Baneblade's sides, but it's all for naught as they are sent fleeing finally. The Baneblade really just kind of anchoring the line here, but now coming under some pressure. And if there's one thing the Baneblade does not like, it is melee. And as Sakarma's Tank Busters are going to be forced back here by the Avatar, actually annihilated by the Avatar, that is going to leave my Baneblade very exposed. Right now, Sakarma's knobs are only just coming out back from reinforcing. He's still busy trying to defend his poor War Truck here. My Inquisitor's tied down back here where she was killing a poor Zoanthrope. Its corpse lying ruined down here. And that leaves the Baneblade exposed. Fortunately, a Tyranna formation ult knocks over those Banshees, chasing them away. And now Sakarma does come in with the clutch team save and interrupts the Avatar with his knobs. And the knobs are now going to be bogging them down. In the meantime, we do have a triple cap, or a double cap, sorry, about to get a triple cap on our opponents. Sakarma sends his unupgraded commando knob down to the bottom here to cap the point. It's not like the guy could do very much up here against most of these troops, as I do get a Lehman Russ out on the field now, so we're going to have double trouble. The Armored Fist pushing through behind a tide of knobs. Definitely 10 out of 10 lore friendliness, as we do beat the crap out of these poor Dire Avengers trying to cap down here. And although our opponents do have these very powerful big beasties here, they don't really have much of an army left besides that. The Seer Council's only just now coming back. Banshee's still reinforcing. So we are able to focus down here on these big beasties. And yeah, quite the wonderful sight here as the Lehman Russ retreats. Victory points counting down. The Baneblade just unleashing 11 barrels of hell on that Swarmlord. We were focusing the Swarmlord out super hard because he had less HP overall. But at this stage, our opponents do GG out of the game, and match is called. So a very intense, very tight game. Came down to quite the last 2 of EP points. And really have to say, Sakarma carried that game quite hard, I think. Managing to keep such a large army afloat for such a long period of time. Now, granted, I got nuked multiple times, but I did lose the entirety of my starting force. My first 2 tiers of units were completely wiped, with only my commanders surviving. Similarly, Furtzen had similar issues keeping troops alive. Ghost did a better job keeping his early squads alive. Dire Avengers and Banshees level 4, which is insane. But unfortunately, just wasn't able to get out or keep those tier 2 and tier 3 units alive. And that in turn hurt him, I think, quite severely. He was stuck reinforcing them a lot. And Ferguson was in a similar spot, though he did keep this wonderful Termicon Brood alive to the bitter end. For Lords, the Inquisitor reached level 5, the Commando Nob level 4, the Ravener Alpha reaching an insane level 8. I think he was doing huge amounts of damage against the infantry there, especially the Nobs and the clumped up Slugga Boys and that sort of thing. He had very good kit for that. And the Warlock there netting level 9, which is really, really good. Providence, as well as the Witchblade of Kurnus, granting him Ethereal Slash, so he was able to get those crazy wombo combos, knocking our troops over. Whereas Sakarmo never upgraded his Commando Nob, and the upgrades I got from my Inquisitor were good in Tier 1 and a little bit into Tier 2, but didn't really carry over too well into the late game. And she was more just a tank with a stun. So, we're going to hop over, look at the stats a little bit. Now, unfortunately, it's the scoreboard into replays is a little bit janky. Not entirely sure why, but we can certainly check out what how everybody did there as well. Get a little bit of an idea of how things went. As you can see here, if you look at the score by the bars, unfortunately it just says 0, which is not fair. But as you can see by the bars there, Sakarmo doing an excellent job in basically all metrics except his commander, who unfortunately died twice. So that was a little brutal there. My Inquisitor staying alive surprisingly well. Now, for the units lost, obviously everybody bled a lot. Eldar, a little less so than everybody else. They're a little more elite, but especially Nids, Guard, and Orcs are just such spammy factions that you really are going to lose a lot of models all the time, and you've got to be ready for that bleed. Obviously, the unit reinforced here, that's, keep in mind, that's because some of my squads got wiped entirely, so they never got a chance to reinforce. But ultimately, obviously, I was a bit of the weak link here, largely just because I had my whole army wiped at one point. But Sakarmo doing an excellent job, Ghost doing an excellent job as well, and definitely a brutal back and forth there. Resources, as well as points captured, so some good stuff there. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Hopefully you found it fun and entertaining, something a little different from the usual fare. It's my first attempt at casting Elite mod. Hopefully it was enjoyable and followable. And if you have any comments, critiques, any questions about the mod or anything, be sure to post them down in the description below, and I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.